Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Looking at the Torah portion for this week and the corresponding prophet readings and Brit Hadashah or Messianic writings or apostolic writings or New Testament writings for this week. We'll be looking at Exodus 22, verse 25 through 24, verse 18. Isaiah 48:10, Isaiah 49:3, and Isaiah 60:17 through 22, and the 5th chapter of Matthew. Gospel according to Matthew. We'll also be hearing from Ariel at various points throughout the afternoon. I want to, first of all, continuing on with the theme from last week, in terms of seeing the equity in judgment of Yahweh. Looking at these various commands that we'll see in Exodus, in the book of Exodus, looking at these various commands, we see the justness or the uprightness or the straightness or the equity of Yahweh. So again, looking at his equity and judgment, matter of fact, let's just as we begin, just look, so we're thinking about things in a way. Just look at real quick, let's see here. Psalms 98 verse 9 says
Psalm 98 verse 5.
Psalm 98 verse 9.
Oh, 9.
Says, for he shall come to judge the earth. He judges the world in righteousness and the people in straightness. In terms of the judgments of Yahweh, it says that the people, he's judging the world and the people in straightness. The King James Version will translate that as equity. Equity.
Which one? Righteousness or
straightness?
Straightness. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, when we think about how Yahweh judges, of course, that's going to be dealing with, he's going to judge based on his character. He's going to make movements based on his character. So when we think about equity, again, straightness, uprightness is dealing with the character of Yahweh, which of course we'll see. We talk about the character of Yahweh, more specifically dealing with his equity, which is an example of his character. And we can also look at Proverbs. So let's look at Proverbs also here. Proverbs chapter 1. Chapter 1, verse 2 says, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instructions of wisdom, justice, and judgment, and equity.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when we look at this here Proverbs, this whole thing is giving you these things in terms of knowledge, understanding, wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity. Which all are things, pertaining to the character of Yahweh, the things that we acquire as a result of the spirit of Yahweh that comes and dwells within us. So when we look at the various laws and commands that we look to see in Exodus, we think about these laws about, what would you do if something happened to your neighbor's goat or whatever. And we think that these things are things that aren't really relevant necessarily to our lives. But what we're seeing here is the application of and the manifestation of the character of the Most High. Okay, so let's look at some of these things.
I mean, it's an extension of the Torah, right?
Well, it is the Torah.
Because the Torah is the character of Yahweh.
Right, it is the Torah. So when we think about these laws, statutes, and commands, we think about the Torah, when we think about the thing that gives us boundaries in life, we're dealing with understanding the character of Yahweh, which is what the Torah is, right? The Torah is the character of Yahweh humanized, right? This is a very important concept to understand. So, again, we'll be looking at more into equity, the character of Yahweh, and also the new covenant taught by Yeshua. And we'll deal with that in Matthews whenever we get up that far. Okay, so instead of reading through this whole thing, I think we're going to just read the various verses and talk about the various verses. If you have any questions, that we don't look at, feel free to chime in. So we want to just first off just look at firstly just that first verse of the portion here in 22:25.
I can read it.
Which said, go ahead, read that.
If a man shall steal an ox or a sheep,
Whoa.
verse 25.
22:25.
Verse
22.
Verse 25.
Verse 25.
Uh-huh.
If thou lend money to any of my people that is poor by thee, thou shalt not be to him as an usurer. Did I say right?
Mm-hmm.
Usurer, neither thou shalt lay upon him
Usury. Okay, very good. Okay, so first of all, if thou lend money to any of my people, this is interesting here concept. I had a conversation with some individuals at one point that speaking about interest and usury and
Capitalism.
and capitalism in general, more specifically capitalism. And the idea of this whole thing being kind of this thing that's basically based on kind of this idea of usury or interest. I'm not giving you you're not dealing with how much the thing is worth. It's you just kind of like a user's fee, right? Like rent, like the idea of renting. You rent forever, right? And you just pay this fee, and it's not you never gain anything but just the ability to be able to use this particular thing for a particular time. Some might say that this is a type of oppression.
I would say it's oppression. It's like run a center.
Yeah, I guess so. If it's like rent a center or one of those check cashing places. I'll never forget when I didn't have no money, right? And I needed $100. And it literally cost me, I think, $98 to borrow $100.
Oh my goodness.
Right? So I needed that 100. They gave me the 100, and then I owed them back $198.
That's crazy.
So, we have these places, in the neighborhoods, these check cashing places that do those type of loans, and these rent-a-center places where you buy something that costs $100 and you end up paying like $300 for the thing, right?
For the house that we live in, which will pay $200 and something $1,000 for something that's worth $75,000.
Well, yeah. I don't like to think about that, but yeah, that's exactly right. So I guess to an extent, when you look at this, I think it's a fine line. I think because it's clearly making a distinction here of how you would treat my people. Which is clearly talking about Israel here, where it's not a thing that it seems to be not a thing that is just blanket for everyone, as if you could potentially lend money to those that were not my people and apply interest or usury to that situation. But again, if we say that usury in and of itself is a form of oppression, and then we just looked at a few verses up, thou shalt neither vex a stranger nor oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Then we have a situation here. If usury is oppression, then the prohibition here for it seems should be across the board.
Yeah.
It's not giving you an across the board command here, but I come to know of those who would say that that would extend it out to all people, based on some of the examples that we have in real life in terms of, these huge interest rates that are put on things like houses and cars, like these major things that we have, and it really keeps you right in bondage, and it's oppressive. So I have to say that I feel like the jury really is still out in my mind in terms of this. But right now it seems as if, to me, I wish that Chris was here to be able to chime in on this. But to me, it seems as if this verse here It specifically says my people, which makes a distinction. It makes it seem as if you're not my people, then I can put that interest on that usury price on, but definitely not towards my people.
I think it's just for money, though. Like, I don't really see it as being like charging someone rent to stay somewhere.
Well, how? But well,
It's just, if you need to borrow some money from me,
you saying, well, I guess you could take it to that point and say that it's only borrowing money.
because I don't think it's like paying for a service or for.
But I guess you have to look at the idea of this whole idea that neither shalt thou lay upon him usury, which is, yes, the context is money, and I guess you could potentially say, well, it must be in the confines of borrowing money.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that there's room for this to be just speaking of interest in general, in terms of any type of service or thing or whatever that you can lend or give
You gotta make a living. If you
right,
just,
that's true, but
if they're selling crops to someone,
yeah,
they're just selling it at price.
it doesn't seem like you make anything.
What was the point of you doing all that labor and work?
But just to play devil's advocate for a moment, it seems as if there was a time in history when there wasn't a such thing as this whole idea of
It's just bartering.
capitalism, right? Where I have a thing, you need a thing, I'll give you my thing for your thing.
Bartering.
We turned it into money, and then
That was a transaction of money.
It's a transaction, and then now I'm giving you this thing at a price more than what it's worth based on how much profit I want to receive. Now,
I think that when you barter,
I
think when you barter, it's not necessarily an equal.
Well, I think it is. Well, it is.
I want something you have. You want something I have.
Right. So say I got
trade.
Right. So you can't say it's not an even trade. If you have something that's potentially of a lesser value, then I'm going to have more. You're going to end up giving me more of your thing to get a lesser amount of my thing. Like say I got some what's this stuff called linen. Say I got some linen, and you got some some barley or something. I'm not going to give you a pound of linen or a pound of barley. I'll give you a pound of linen for like 5 pounds of barley. You know what I mean?
But what I'm saying is that it might not. It doesn't necessarily translate as an equal deal.
Well, of course it does. That's what I just explained.
I mean, I'm saying like if I have a service, like if you have a service of doing electrical work, and YHWH has a service of doing haircuts.
Right. So that means I need like a whole bunch of haircuts to equal up to.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's still relative. It's whatever you agree upon.
Right.
You might agree upon 20 haircuts, or you might say, "Well, I think it's 100 haircuts." All I'm saying is that it's debatable as to whether or not it's
I think the other thing that we had to think about is because of our Western minds, we kind of think of things kind of like in this capitalistic kind of a way. In terms of these things have to be worth a certain amount, and I have to be like on top at the end of the situation. Only because like this is like this is the system upon which we come up in.
Yeah.
Is it corrupt?
I mean, some of it's corrupted.
I think it is to a certain degree. But again, it's something to think about in terms of what this actually means in terms of this whole idea of usury.
I think also, I don't know about the context in those times or whatever, but if it's a need, somebody has a need and they have money they need money or whatever, and it's not like they just want to have some money to spend it on something that's random, but like it's an actual necessity. That's another thing to take into consideration as well.
Well, right, like these check cashing places that give you these payday loans.
Yeah.
Right, that fits exactly into this because part of this context is that is poor.
Yeah, poor.
Right, the fact that you're needy in the first place is part of the whole situation. You're getting money because you need money.
It's not
just because I want to get these Jordans or something over here, or I want to get this brand new plow to hook up to my ox. You know what I mean?
And you already have a plow.
Right, but I want the state of the line one. I mean, the state of the art one. Mm-hmm. The idea of being needy is part of the situation. So I guess thinking about it in that regard kind of makes it to put that interest on somebody who's needy already in the first place.
It is oppression.
Right. It is. That is oppression.
Just don't get on the money if you don't want to.
Well, here you go. Okay, so again, when we're looking at this idea of equity, seeing the straightness of, and this is the issue when you look at these types of things, you have to seek to find the straightness or find the equity in it. If we say that this is the straight way, this is the right way, and this is the way that Yahweh would have for it to be done, then as the more I look at this, the more I kind of lean back towards this other way of thinking, is because if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander, right? If I say that this is the way that Yahweh wants for you to treat his people, why don't we expand it to be all people, right? He's giving you a commandment that, yes, is specific to his people, but what reason do we have to say that this is just not a thing that we should do in general to all peoples? I don't know that we have that reason necessarily. But I digress. We can go. Again, going on with the next two verses, if thou at all take thy neighbor's raiment to pledge, thou shalt deliver it unto him by that the sun goes down. For that is his covering only, it is his raiment for his skin, wherein shall he sleep. And it shall come to pass when he cries unto me that I will hear, for I am gracious. So in other words, if you have this person who says, well, I'll do this or that for you, I owe you this or that, but until I'm able to give it to you, here, take my cloak off of my back, right? You're supposed to give that thing back to him, so that he can be able to sleep in it.
How is he supposed to survive?
Because we're talking about it
that was
this
a necessity. You took something that another necessity.
Well, he gave something that was a necessity. In other words, if I say, well, I got to get, I mean, the equivalent would be like somebody's car, or if you maybe your horse or something, the thing that gets you to travel, something that you desperately need. You can't hold that thing away from them and then take away this, this great need that they have for this thing. which again is this concept of, the straightness or this equity or righteousness in judgment. When we deal with these, these various creditors and things that we deal with now, perfect example. If you think about like, our utilities and things, right? Nobody cares. Nobody cares if you freeze at night, if, circumstances come about and you can't pay. Nobody cares. You get that shutout notice.
They do make a couple exceptions, but not a lot of exceptions.
Well, right. But they
don't care about us.
In the context
of us, they would just turn us on.
In the context of Israel, right? There's exceptions to be made in terms of these things that are a necessity for you. I guess in this circumstance, you'll go and sleep in the thing, and then when the day comes back again, then you just do that thing over again and work whatever debt that is off. But again, we're looking at these things where, it's kind of these things that we're totally removed from these ideas and concepts. But what we are looking for inside of these things is the straightness, is the righteousness, right? Is the justness in these judgments that Yahweh is making, right? So when we live and we move and we deal with people, right? And we are followers of Yeshua, right? These are the types of things that, should be the basis for our actions, right? Rightness, uprightness, right? Equity, right? We can't treat people just any kind of way and then at the same time say that we are indeed followers of Yeshua, right? It don't exemplify his character. So when we, for instance, look and see people who say that they represent Israel, say that they represent Messiah, say that they represent the Most High, right? Say that they represent the Torah. There should be a way that they behave. There should be a way that they act. Right? You should be able to look to their ways and their actions to be able to see the character of Yahweh manifest in and through their actions. Like when we look at this, we can look at this and see the character of Yahweh manifest through these judgments, right? For example, I was looking at this debate just last night. Right, looking at this debate, and you had these two sides, looking at, dealing with the scripture, right, representing the Most High, and then all of a sudden, whenever kind of emotions started to flare up, and this thing started to get, kind of hot and heavy. These people started just going way out of character, right? When they were supposed to be those representing Yeshua, right? Where they clearly weren't doing that, through their actions. Okay, so verse 28. Verse 28. This is an interesting one here. Verse 28. Thou shalt not revile. In King James it says, "Thou shalt not revile the gods, nor curse the ruler of thy people." When we look at this here verse, let's see here. Verse 28. In the King James Version, it literally has a little God. There's a little God, which, and also in the context, in terms of the, the ruler of thy people, it makes it seem as if it's only talking about kind of these earthly kind of mighty ones, or those elders, or those that are judges, or so on and so forth. Because when we look at let's see, what this is, Exodus 22, 28. 22, 28. The word there is really just Elohim. It's just Elohim, which, just looking at it, you can't really make a distinction whether it's talking about the Most High Elohim, or if it's talking about just a mighty one, or a judge, or a ruler, or so on and so forth. So you really have to look at the context to see what it's talking about. To make that distinction. I think some translations actually, do attribute that to the Most High, which to me just seems just to be redundant if it was talking about the Most High, because why would you revile the Most High? Right? Why would you?
That was already covered.
Right? Why would you make light, or let's see here. Let's look at some of these here words. Why would you make small or light, or act in contempt, or bring into contempt these, or curse or despise, or to lightly esteem Elohim, right? All of these things, it just seems as if at this point in the game, we should already be there, right, at that place. So it seems to me that at least KJV, at least it seems as if they have this rendering correct in terms of the lowercase gods. It says Elohim, but it's speaking of men. It's speaking of men, and not necessarily Elohim himself, right? Okay, so let's look at some of these other verses. Let's see here. Again, when we look at the next chapter, chapter 23, in terms of, again, looking at the equity of Yahweh, looking at the character of Yahweh manifest through his commands, through the way that he, will have for his people to deal with each other. When we look at, for instance, Verse 3, nor shall you be partial to a poor man in his dispute. Nor shall you be partial to a poor man in his dispute. Verse 3, in terms of, being a respecter of persons. You can't be partial to somebody who's rich or who's poor. You can't say, well, I feel sorry for you just because, you don't have nothing, so I'm going to rule in your favor just for the simple fact that you don't have nothing, so I'm just going to cut you a deal, based on your lack or what have you. Here we see this idea of equity that is present in the character of Yahweh in terms of the straightness. And it says here again, it's hard to read this in the King James. Neither shalt thou countenance a poor man in his cause. Really, when you look at that, it's dealing with being partial. What's that? Let me see Mommy's version. Let me see this. New American Standard 23. Yeah. Nor shall you be partial to a poor man in his dispute. New American Standard has it more, it's a more literal translation that's giving you that idea of partiality, right? So we can't deal with partiality, being a respecter of persons, treating somebody a certain kind of a way based on a fact of, whatever circumstances they might be. You might feel sorry for somebody because they're poor and you want to do something more for that person, but we have to operate on the stance of righteousness, right? So if somebody wrong, but they're poor, right? You can't just say, well, I'll just give you a pass from being wrong just for the simple fact that you're poor, right? This is the idea here that we're looking at. Okay. Verse 5 says, if you see the donkey of one who, this is a good one here for in terms of thinking about the equity of Yahweh. If you see the donkey of one who hates you, lying helpless under its load, you shall refrain from leaving it to him. You shall surely release it with him. Now, you think about, being honest, if you're riding down the street and you see your worst enemy, broken down, trying to take their tire off and they can't do it for whatever reason. And this is what this here is saying here. This person who hates you, you can't drive past that person and be like, oh, look at so-and-so. That's what they get. Right?
Reminds me of the Good Samaritan.
Right. It's exactly the same story, right? You can't look at somebody and just say, well, because of the state of our relationship, I'm not going to offer you equity because, we aren't on good terms with each other, right? If somebody's in need, in other words, if somebody's in need, right, they're in need no matter who they are. And if we see a person in need and, and we're able to be able to go and help that person, by all means, according to what we're reading right here, you help that person, right? So again, we're not we don't got donkeys and, we don't live in that kind of a society. But, the idea, the concept is still something that's relevant. I can't look and see the one who hates me, who is in trouble, and I don't try to at least try to help and get them out of that thing, and especially not kind of you know kind of you know being joyful about the thing, because you know it's very easy to look at and see your enemy fall and stumble and feel like, oh, that's what they get, kind of a thing, right? But this is the exact opposite of that, right? Okay. Okay, so continuing on, there's various commands that go along these same veins in terms of dealing with people, um, in a right way, in dealing with people in terms of equity, in terms of straightness, in terms of uprightness. Um, Going down, you got repeats, really nailing this thing home in terms of oppression of a stranger. In verse 9, it goes through a little thing about, oh, okay, and then it goes directly from verse 9 in terms of oppressing the stranger to give you the Sabbath for the land, as well as the weekly Sabbath. It gives you the Sabbath land rest command here in verse 10. 6 years thou shalt sow and shalt gather the fruits, but the 7th year thou shalt let it rest and lie still, that the poor of thy people may eat, and that they leave the beasts in the field shall eat. In like manner thou shalt deal with the vineyard and thine olive yard. Okay, so when you talk about the 7th year, in an agricultural kind of a setting, you was just, you didn't sow anything during that time, and the stuff just grow of itself, and then those that were poor will be able to take, what grew from itself for themselves. Which again is dealing with, the responsibility that Yahweh has in his law and his commands for those that have to help those that don't have. But when we look at verse 12, where it says, 6 days thou shalt do thy work, and on the 7th day thou shalt rest, that thine ox and thine ass may rest, and the son of thy handmaid and the stranger may be refreshed. Right? So if in the event that you do have these those that work for you that are not Israel, that are strangers, right? They still are to be benefiting from the Shabbat, right? So you can't be like those who say, well, I have a business is going to go on, and I'll just let the Gentiles run my business on Shabbat so that I can still get that money, and they're going to work, and then I'll rest, right? But here, of course, Yahweh is saying that they, the stranger, those that work for you, or everybody's going to rest, right? So again, we look at, some of these people who look at the Shabbat as this thing, well, that was for the Jews, that was for them, Gentiles aren't included in that. We see right here just built in, again, this is a restating of, what it already said in chapter 20, verse 10, all of those that will be keeping the Shabbat. It's you and your house and everybody in your house, maid servants, strangers, so on and so forth. So again, it's just a restating of that here in terms of saying that, everybody needs to be refreshed on the Shabbat, right? So again, we can't, kind of just box this whole thing in terms of being this thing that's just for Israel, right? If you love Yahweh, He wants us all to be refreshed, right? Israel and the strangers, but especially, those that are with Him, Israel, and those that are attached to Israel, right? He gives that way for us all to be refreshed. So that's just something to look at in terms of understanding that the Shabbat is just across the board. It's not something just only for man in general. Let's see here. 13. Read 13 what that says over there.
What?
23:13.
23. 13. Now concerning everything which I have said to you, be on your guard, and do not mention the name of other gods, nor let them be heard from your mouth.
Okay, so it says concerning everything which I have said, be on your guard. Be on your guard. Or, let's see, what does it say here? Circumspect. That word is shamar, which means to hedge, as with thorns, to hedge, to guard, to protect, to attend. So when you think about the Torah in general, right? That's what it does. It guards. It makes boundaries. It sets boundaries for Yahweh's people, right? A way that we are to live, right? Shamar, to beware, to be circumspect, to keep, to mark, to observe, to preserve, right? So all of these things, all of these ways that Yah is giving for Moses to give to the people, He's calling for the people to guard these ways, to guard these laws and keep them, to actually use them as a hedge around you, where it is really this thing that kind of keeps you in and keeps it, whatever it may be, out, right? So these ways that He's giving you, take hold of these things and guard these things and keep these things, right? When we think about Israel in terms of ancient Israel, we can see where under the old covenant, we can see where Yahweh's will and ways wasn't guarded, right? They oftentimes went off, and the influence of the neighboring nations always infiltrated Israel's actions and deeds, as where we can see that they didn't do this verse here. And in all things that I have said unto you, be circumspect. We can see where Israel was not indeed circumspect in regards to these laws and commandments. one thing that people take with, going looking at the rest of this verse where it says, make no mention of the name of other gods. This is a lot of times where people who don't want you to say these pagan names of gods because of this verse right here where it says, make no mention of the name of other gods. So when they can look at various, right, even to the days of the week, words, English words that somehow connect to various pagan gods, so on and so forth. You won't say Thursday because that's Thor's day. It says
Sunday.
right, or Sunday. It's not a name per se, but people do worship the sun, so therefore you can't
say sun.
Well, yeah, I guess so. So because it says make no mention of these words. First of all, this word here is zakar. Zakar, which is a lot of times translated as remember or remembrance or memorial. It can be translated as mention, but I don't think that the idea is the idea of you saying a this or that word. As where you have these people who say, well, I can't say Lord, it's pagan. I can't say God, God, it's pagan. I can't say Jesus, right, because it's it's pagan. I can't make mention of these other gods. But I don't believe that this is what this particular verse is saying, based on the word zakar, where when you think about zakar, where it's used in other places, like for instance, with remember the Sabbath. Remembering the Sabbath or memorializing the Sabbath, or making it in remembrance and continuing in the remembrance of the Sabbath, the idea is much more, is fuller than just kind of mentioning the Sabbath. Right? I don't just mention.
You don't just say the word Sabbath.
Yeah. I just don't mention the Sabbath. Right? It's part of the doing. Right? It's part of keeping the Shabbat, where it's more than just kind of a thing that's going on in terms of me just kind of saying it. I'm not just like, right? It's remembering it. It's doing it. It's acknowledging it and keeping it the way that Yahweh would have for me to do it. So to leave it at the idea of just mentioning it, just kind of just saying it, is not the full. You're not getting the fullness of this word zakar when you leave it at this idea of just kind of mentioning it. If I'm just saying like Shabbat, right? That don't make me. I'm not keeping it. I'm not memorializing it. I'm not memorializing it by just saying, like, say I wake up on Shabbat morning and just say Shabbat, and then I'm good, right? Or when the sun goes down on Friday night, I just say Shabbat, and then I just go on with whatever it is that I do normally. I'm not remembering the Shabbat, right? I'm not zakaring the Shabbat. I'm not memorializing it. I'm not remembering it, right? I'm simply just saying it, and there's no real connection to me saying it and the actions.
It's like if you say Sunday, you're not worshiping the sun.
And if you say Thursday, no Rosh Hashanah.
Right, exactly, right. If I say the day Sunday, all I'm doing is just referring to the first day of the week. I'm not I'm not worshiping the sun. Now, at the same time, I don't want to kind of minimize this anyway, because when we think about sometimes, people say, well, I'm not doing what you think I'm doing with this pagan thing, so therefore it doesn't matter. In terms of, like, say, when we think about like Christmas trees, right? You're saying, well, this thing may be an idol. This thing may be an idol, but I'm not using it as an idol. I just have it. I just have it in my house, but it's not. I'm not using it as an idol. I'm not sure if that's the same idea there. I can't say, well, I want to remix this, and because I love Jesus, I want to remember his birthday with this Christmas tree, right? I think that's taking it too far, right? Because you went into this kind of act of implementing things that are pagan, which is more than just kind of mentioning or saying an actual word. Now, my thing is, when I think about what some of these things are, also in the scriptures, it takes me to a place where I'm able to kind of verify these things that I'm saying, in terms of, just saying a word that has connections to a particular pagan god. For instance, Baal, which is translated as Lord in the scriptures. It's translated as Lord in the scriptures, Baal. You have people who won't say Lord because it's pagan. They won't say Baal because it's pagan, right? But when we think about the language of Hebrew, Baal literally means possessor. It literally means owner. It can mean husband, right? It literally means the Lord of a thing, right? So if the equivalent really would be, if I take a thing that's this common noun, I take a thing that's this common noun, and I turn it into a god, and now I'm using this common thing, as now a proper thing. I would now, under this logic, now I have to stop using the usage of this word in a common way. I start this cult and we worship chairs, and our God is chair. What? And we worship chairs. Now I can't say chair anymore.
Just like fish, dog. Fish. There's a fish.
This
God.
is limitless. It's limitless.
It goes on and on.
It goes
so
on forever.
Hardly anything, because people made a god out of every single thing.
Exactly. Anything. It just doesn't stop. As soon as somebody begins to worship a thing, under this logic, I can no longer say this word, because of the fact that people began to worship this thing. This is not the This is not the point that this verse here is making in terms of mentioning these gods. Now, when I begin to remember these various gods, and I begin to memorialize these various gods in a way that is like unto worship, and so on and so forth, that's the point that we're getting at here. Not just me simply saying a thing. Oh, but just to bring proof. Just to bring proof, if we look here, let me use my little split screen technology again. If we go over to Nahum, chapter 1, verse 2, where it says God is jealous, and it says the Lord and Yahweh revenges, and Yahweh revenges, it says it twice, and is furious. Right here in the King James where it says furious, this is two words here. Baal, Chama. Let's look at it in the Hebrew. Let's look at this in the Hebrew. This is second verse. Where's my Hebrew interpretation? Boom. Second verse. Yahweh and Baal right here. Baal Chama. Baal right here. Chama, which in English this would say the Lord of fury. The King James puts it as furious. Some verses, some translations do say the Lord of fury, but King James just says furious. But this in the Hebrew literally says Baal Chama, referring to Yahweh.
What verse is that?
That's Nahum chapter 1, verse 2. So when people try to say that you can't even say Lord because it's pagan. You can't even say Baal. You can't say Baal. That's pagan. The prophet, under the inspiration of the Most High, calls Yahweh Baal Chama, the Lord of fury. Okay? So it's not about saying it. It's about really memorializing it and putting it in that place where it leads to action. Right? Just camera problems. Okay, hold on 1 second here. I'm gonna load that. Okay. Load that mode. Okay, so going back to, anybody have any questions or comments about that?
Nope. You don't have anything?
23. What verse was that?
Are we still on 23?
Yeah, hold on. Let me look and see here. Okay, now let's go down to verse 20. Verse 20 of chapter 23. Let's see, 20, 21, 22. Read that for me.
Just verse 20?
No, 20, 21, 22.
Oh, okay. Behold, I am going to send an angel before you to guard you on the way, and to bring you into the place which I prepared. Be on your guard before him and obey his voice. Do not be rebellious toward him, for he will not pardon your transgression, since my name is in him. But if you will truly obey his voice and do all that I say, then I will be an enemy to your enemies and an adversary to your adversaries.
Okay, very good. So, when we look at these verses here, when we think about this, again, we just recently looked at this word here, where it says, "I sent an angel." Some translations say messenger. The word is malach. The word is malach. That's a coup. Right? Which literally means, a messenger, teacher, ambassador. It's translated as angel. And king.
King.
Yeah, king. Right, so when we look at this in the ancient, we have the palm, we have the backwards, of course, but we have the ox's head, the shepherd's goat, and the water. So again, when we look at this here, and especially in the context of what's going on in terms of this angel here is going to be a guide for the people. The angel is going to be a guide for the people. So we can see the idea of the staff in the hand here, right? Or the mighty staff. The mighty staff in the strong hand or palm, right? The mighty staff in a strong hand. When we think about that idea of this mighty staff in the strong hand, we could think about the idea of an ambassador. An ambassador is somebody who hold a certain power or a certain distinction as a representative of someone or something, right? When we think about this we think about this messenger, right? We think about this messenger. The messenger, of course, is bringing this message. The messenger is bringing this message, right, to an individual, right? Which could be a case when we talk about what this is, and we think about what this is in context of what's going on in terms of Yahweh giving the people, prior to this part, the law, the statutes and commands that's actually showing Yahweh's people the way that they should go. We think about that in and of itself is a a message, from a messenger, right? So when we look at this, the first thing I thought about looking at this was just the idea of this old covenant in general. In terms of the old covenant, was really this angel, this messenger, that was given to keep the end of the way and to bring you to the place which I have prepared. Right? He's literally speaking of a messenger that would literally take them into the land. You can see where, Yahweh's presence was the thing that the people followed into the land, where you can say that messenger, that representation of Yahweh was that message. But at the same time, we can look at this and see the old covenant in general of this message, of this this strong leading, in this strong hand that was taking Israel to the promised land. Beware of him. Beware of this message and the messenger, right? Obey his voice. Provoke him not. So this is the interesting part. For he will not pardon your transgressions.
Is that because that at that time that wasn't what Yeshua was doing?
Well, we're not talking about Yeshua. We're talking about, this angel, this messenger, this leader of the people into the land. Yeah. But that's what it says right there, which causes there to be a type of distinction between the two. Because if you have this idea of, for he will not pardon your transgressions. He will not pardon your transgressions. We looked at these laws. It's interesting. We looked at these laws, not so much here, but previous, where these certain laws, if you do this, it's worthy of the death penalty. It doesn't matter what you do, how sorry you are, you still die as a result of the thing that you've done. Right? There's no pardoning. There's no pardoning from the wrong that has been done. Right? That's what we had. If you do this, you'll be blessed. We'll bring you into the land. We'll take away, we'll remove all of the Hivites and the Jebusites and the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and we'll remove these people from the land. If you follow after the messenger, after the law, statutes, and commands that I've given you, if you follow after the message, right? That notice, that word or communication, written or verbal, sent from one person to another, this message, right? That we see here is the message is the Torah. The message is the law of Yahweh being sent to the people, and this law is leading the people forward. But it does not pardon your transgressions. Right? It doesn't pardon your transgressions.
So you're saying that the Torah isn't pardoning the transgressions?
Well, we've seen how it wasn't, right? We've seen how certain things, right? You did certain things, there's certain this. When we look at the idea of equity, it's not changing the fact that you did something. It's just kind of making it right. Right? If I take from you, what makes that thing right is for me to just give back to you, and then give back to you however many fold the particular thing calling for. But it don't change the fact that I did the thing, right? It's just I'm just making that thing right. I'm just dealing with things in terms of equity, right? But it's not taking away anything. It's just kind of making things right. So when we look at what the Torah is doing, and this here thing is these verses is a representation we see in the old covenant in terms of the old covenant was leading the people in a particular way. It was leading the people in a particular way, and if the people did what Yahweh asked for the people to do, then there will be a particular blessing that will come as a result of it. Here, if thou shalt indeed obey his voice in verse 22 and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy unto thy enemies. If you do all of these things, then I'll take care of you. You read in the Psalm when it talked about all of the enemies that was coming against him and talking bad against him and so on and so forth. If I trust in Yahweh, I know that he'll take care of my enemies. It's the same kind of a thing here. We look at this. If thou shalt indeed obey his voice and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy to thy enemies, to thine adversaries. And then again in verse 23, when it talks about even going in and removing all of those people from the land, for you in the land. Right? But this is all as a result of you this these laws and these commandments. But again, the key for this for me here was this idea that for he will not pardon your transgressions. He will not pardon your transgressions. Pardon there is the word that means to lift, to advance, to arise, to ease. Another place that word is used is here. Let's put it up here. Another place that word is used is let's see here. Isaiah, Yeshayahu 50.
That's like a flag, like Nisi.
Nasaf. Isaiah 53. So let me put this over here. Boop. Boop. Verse 12 says, therefore I give among the great, and he divides the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his being unto death, and he was counted with the transgressors, and he bore the sin of the many, and made intercession for the transgressors. The word here is bore, which over in the other verse in Exodus 23, verse 21, is translated as pardon. He pardoned the sin of many. That, of course, Isaiah 53 is, of course, talking about Yeshua and what he will do. Right? That's talking about what Yeshua will do. So we see what the old covenant was able to do. Yes, it was able to lead you and guide you. And as strong as you were able to receive the blessings that came along with it. But it wasn't able to pardon your transgressions. But we see that there will come a time when there is one that's coming that is able to do what we wasn't able to find inside of the old covenant, where it does indeed pardon the sin of many, right? And makes intercession for the transgressions of the people. Right, so I thought that was interesting in looking at that and seeing how we see that connection there in terms of what we see with the old covenant and what the old covenant does and where it lacks. And we see, again, what the new covenant is able to do and what it, indeed does for those that become part of it. Let's see here. Okay, so going on as it goes to the end of the Torah portion, we'll talk more about the old and the new covenant in a little bit here. We see going forward, it goes through Moses coming down with the commands, the instructions that he gives to the people to wait for him in a specific area. And there's kind of this thing that they do with the sacrifices unto Yahweh, kind of as a solidifying of the covenant. Before they heard it, they said, whatever it is that you say we'll do. And they go on to do the same thing after they've actually heard the actual covenant and, reaffirm the words that they've already said previously, and say, all the things that are within this, these words, will do it, kind of a sign, a sealing of this covenant. And I just wanted to not really talk about verse, but just mention 24:14, just mention it, where we'll think about it later on, but just mention the fact that when Moses goes back up into the mountain with Yahweh, we look at verse 24:14, and he said unto the elders, tarry here for us until we come again unto you, and behold, Aaron and Hur are with you. If any man have any matters to do, let him come unto them. Right, so we see here, we'll see why this is important later. I guess if you read it already, you already know. But in terms of just keeping this in the idea of this continuation of the thing, right, we see that here Moses goes away and he leaves Aaron and Hur in charge of the situation, right? Okay, it's a cliffhanger. Okay, so before we go into the Brit Hadashah, we want to look at a few verses in Isaiah that kind of point us to things that we find inside of the new covenant. We see with the old covenant gives us the equity of Yahweh. It gives us his righteous judgments. It shows us the character of Yahweh and how it is that we're supposed to be. It gives us all that. It shows us all that we're supposed to be doing, how we're supposed to be behaving. It gives us all that with the Torah. It shows us what it looks like. But it doesn't change us on the inside. It doesn't give us the strength, power, and ability to carry those things out. It simply shows us what it looks like, right? That's what we see with the old covenant. The old covenant will take you somewhere. It will get you to a place, and if you do what it says do, there's blessings that come behind you. We saw that, but that was never enough for Israel. It was never enough for his people. But what we see over in some of these verses, which are just a few verses here, in Isaiah, starting in Isaiah 48, verse 10 says what?
Behold, I refined you, but not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction.
Okay, right. So we're talking about this idea of being refined, this idea of being transformed. The word refined in the Hebrew is saraf, which means to fuse metal, to refine, to cast, or to refine, goldsmith, or purging, or trying. So when we think about these things that go on with these precious metals, if you find the thing in nature, that at the end of the day is silver, when you find it, it don't look like silver that you would know. They have to, because it's this thing it's kind of like this, like say for instance, if you was to have a rock that's kind of like mixed up with all these other things, and you take heat to it, when you take that thing and put it in the fire, there's a bunch of impurities and things that aren't silver mixed in with it. It's a big clump of mostly silver, right? It's just, if you find some silver, it's a big clump of gold too. You find this thing that's mostly silver or mostly gold, but it's kind of intermixed with these other things. It's not just like it's on the outside. It's on the inside and the outside. It's like a big clump of something, right? Me and Hiskey was out there messing with the dirt, right? You find these big clumps of dirt, balls of dirt. Some of them are so compacted, right, that you can't even just break it up. If it's hard, it needs to get wet or something so it gets softer so you can break the thing up. But we look at these precious metals and so on and so forth. These things are all intermixed together and compacted. So when you saraf it, when you refine it, it's applying that heat to it, and all of it causes all of the impurities are inside and outside all around it to be burned off from it, right? So again, it's talking about this transformation. It's still silver. It's silver from beginning to end, but it's a removal of all of the impurities and things that are, that kind of diminish it, right? So in that verse 48:10, where it says, "Behold, I have refined thee," it's talking about Israel being refined, talking about how all of the impurities that are within his people need to be refined and burned away, right? But when we look at the old covenant doesn't do that. It's not a refining kind of a process. The old covenant didn't change you as an individual. You stayed that lump of mixed up silver, and you just moved in a certain way. You just did a certain thing, but you wasn't changed on the inside. Your heart wasn't changed. Your heart wasn't transformed, right? There was nothing that was burned off of you. Israel as a whole, you can say, was refined, because when Israel came out of Egypt and went into the wilderness, there was a whole bunch of people that died. So Israel as a whole, it shows you a picture of how, right, the nation of Israel was refined in terms of the people that came out it was still Israel who went into the land, but the thing that corporately Israel, people died, right? The rebellious ones and the disobedient ones and all that died in the wilderness. So we can see a picture of Israel as a whole being refined, but now it's talking about individuals. It's talking about, yes, individuals and also nationally, but what would go on with the new covenant is that you yourself as an individual will be refined and transformed, right? Transformed from kind of one state to another. 49 verse 3.
And he said to me, "You are my servant Israel, in whom I will show my glory."
Okay, so again, this is kind of a theme that doesn't necessarily change from old to new in terms of his representatives, who is Israel, being, manifesting the glory of Yahweh. But we're able to see a better example with the new covenant that is to come of people who authentically have been changed by Yahweh, by his spirit, manifesting the character of Yahweh, not just because they do a thing, but because they have been changed by Yahweh, and as a result of that change, are manifesting the character of Yahweh, and again showing the glory of Yahweh, manifesting his presence and his glory to the people.
I was just looking that up because I didn't know I can't hardly talk, what the Hebrew word for glory was, but it's the word pa'ar, which means to boast or to embellish, or like beauty, basically.
But it's talking about showing my beauty,
showing Yahweh's
which
beauty.
is Yahweh's beauty,
yeah,
which is his character.
Yeah,
right. When we see the various kind of pictures of Yahweh and who he is, and the throne of Yahweh, and it's this radiant, colorful, kind of beautiful thing. When we exemplify Yahweh, it's not to say that we walk around and we have like rainbows shining off of us, like glowing, right? Radiantness and illumination, so to speak. It's referring to, in terms of us, is his character. Again, it's referring to his character and the manifestation of the way that the way that Yahweh will be represented in the flesh, walking around, not about shininess per se, but that us actually walking in his characteristics can be pictured as shininess or beautifulness.
I think that it should show forth from us, like, I was talking to some of the moms. One of the moms said, whenever you was at the zoo, she's trying to make sure she didn't cuss.
That's funny. They don't know me, why they?
I don't know.
I look like I don't want to be cussed around or something.
I guess so.
It must be the beard, I think.
I don't know. Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm just saying that, like, if we are going around, if we're representing Yah, then there should be a, the people should be able to see something.
I think, well, that's the point.
They shouldn't treat you like you're common.
Right.
Because, or
and they should
like
want to be.
Else.
They should want to be common.
They should want to be like you.
At the apex of what you want of what Yahweh wants for this to be, not just about, well, I want to act a certain kind of way around you, but I want to actually be another way based on how I seen you being, not just kind of just going through motion. Because again, all that's old covenant right there. Me now, I'll just be a certain kind of way because I don't want to offend you, but I'm not being changed on the inside. That's the old covenant where it's just you doing things. You're just doing things, but you're not changed on the inside. You're just going through steps.
And most of the time, the people that are just doing things on the outside are the ones that don't stick around for too.
Right. Right, exactly, because it doesn't last.
Because it didn't actually do anything.
Right. Right. There was no burning. There was no transformation. There was no furnace. There was no change that happened.
And then also, if you look at it, we talk about transforming things. A lot of times if you have ingredients and you transform them, you can't go back to the old way.
Right.
Because you already burned off all the impurities. So
exactly.
You can't go back to being impure.
You're saying something right now. That's one saved, always saved right there.
Well, if you cook a cake, if I bake a cake,
you can't
I can't get my flour, I can't
no.
get my sugar, I can't get my egg.
No, it's cake now. It's done.
It's another thing.
Exactly.
So if you totally get transformed.
So what you saying? I'm
saying if you totally get transformed, you're transformed.
So there's a whole bunch of people out here
that never got
who making claims to have been transformed,
and they didn't do it.
But they still walk around looking like some flour.
Yeah, or
they supposed to be bread. You supposed to be cake, but you ain't nothing but some flour and some eggs and some whatever else it takes to make cake.
Nope.
Just sitting in a container. Like you got the ingredients.
Yeah.
Right, but yeah, sugar. I'm getting all the ingredients, right? You ain't nothing but a whole bunch of ingredients, which you ain't never been refined. You ain't never been transformed. Because if you was, then you wouldn't be behaving like you do. Right? This is what is being spoken of here by the prophet in terms of what he will do for his people, in terms of transforming his people, so that they'll show forth his glory. Isaiah 60:17 through 22. We'll look at this and then we'll go over to Matthew.
17.
What are you going to do?
Instead of bronze, I will bring gold. And instead of iron, I will bring silver. And instead of wood, bronze. Instead of stones, iron. And I will make peace your administrators and righteousness your overseers. Violence will not be heard again in your land, nor devastation, nor destruction within your borders. But you will call your walls salvation and your gates praise. No longer will you have the sun for light by day, nor for brightness will the moon give you light. But you will have Yahweh for your everlasting light, and your Elohim for your glory. Your sun will set no more, neither will your moon wane. For you will have Yahweh for an everlasting light, and the days of your mourning will be finished. Then all your people will be righteous. They will possess the land forever, the branch of my planting, the work of my hands, that I may be glorified. The smallest one will become a clan, and the least one a mighty nation. I, Yahweh, will hasten it in its time. Okay, very good. So we see right there where, again, it's this thing where Yahweh. I can pull the string on this. We see this thing going on where there is, again, this transformation thing that's going to happen that leads unto where we'll be with Yahweh in terms of that end times kind of a situation where we are totally dependent and connected to him as a result of the transformation.
when we get to the place of being, beyond all of these natural connections, and being totally connected to the Most High, as a result of this transformation, where he's taken brass and transforming it into gold, right? It's a transformation where brass is like a copper bronze mixture, I believe, where it don't have nothing to do with gold necessarily, right? Where it's taking this thing that's just kind of a compound metal and refining it in a way where it doesn't transform into this other kind of illustrious kind of a thing, right? This transformation that's happening, right? Again, the old covenant don't do that. The old covenant don't transform you. It just gives you the ingredients for righteousness, but it don't make you righteous, right? It don't change your heart, right? Where this thing that he's talking about is transforming the individual, changing it into this refined, this new thing. Right, that at the end of the day, again, that I may be glorified, that Yahweh is glorified, that you're able to see the glory of Yahweh through the work that he has done, right? Through the old covenant, it's about my strength. So Yahweh is not necessarily glorified. Well, you can't say that he will be glorified by you doing the things that he has put forth. So we can't say that through the old covenant Yahweh is not glorified, but he's more so glorified in this way, because now the ability is taken out of your hands, the strength is taken out of your hands, and now he's giving you the strength to be able to walk out the things that he's calling for you to do, where your ability to walk in the old covenant makes you look away too. It's showing Yahweh's goodness because he's the one that came up with this thing, but it's also showing your personal ability to be able to walk this out, as to where now in this new covenant, where he's now changing us and transforming us, is more, he's glorified more, because it's not based off of your strength, it's based off of his strength. Okay, let's turn over to Matthew chapter 5. And again, this is we'll just go through some of these verses. I'm not going to read through the whole thing. I'll just look at
the chapter.
It's the whole chapter, yeah.
Matthew 5.
And I probably will reference most of the verses in the whole chapter, but instead of reading it and then reading the verses again, we can just look at it and read them, as we go through. But I will have you read 1 through 3.
All right.
Matthew 5, chapter 5, verse 1 through 5. 3. It says what?
Chapter 5. And seeing the multitudes, he went up into a mountain. And when he was set, his disciples came unto him. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed.
Good. Okay, so as we look at this, we'll look and see how Yeshua taught the new covenant. The new covenant taught by Yeshua. So when we actually look at the scriptures, knowing that Yeshua is the manifestation of the new covenant, Yeshua brings about the new covenant. He is the way in which the new covenant is enacted. In his teachings, he don't come out and say, "This I'm talking about the new covenant." He never does that. He don't even say the new covenant at all in this whole ministry, except for in at the Last Supper with his disciples, where he says, "This is the new covenant" to his disciples.
My blood.
But in all of his teachings, here, again, he's talking to these multitudes of people because we know what the new covenant is. We can look and recognize that he's teaching the new covenant, but he's not saying, "Oh, I'm talking about the new covenant right here." But we can look and see based on what he's saying that's what he's talking about. And so this is a perfect example of that. When we look and see verse 3, we get these things that are referred to as the Beatitudes. Verse 3, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the poor in spirit. So first of all, when we look at this in the Greek, poor here literally means like a beggar or a pauper, somebody who's economically poor, monetarily poor. This word patokos in the Greek. So when you think about that in terms of being poor in spirit, it seems as if it's kind of, I guess it could really be misleading, because like, what is that even talking about? Like, how can we think about the spirit and refer to it as being this thing that's kind of economically diminished? And this be a thing that Yeshua is referring to as something that is blessed, is a blessing.
So just because you're humble.
Well, I think the idea is, yes, humility. The idea is humility, but I'm just saying in terms of the word that's used in the Greek, and don't necessarily bring about that idea of humility. It's just giving you the idea of poorness.
When you poor, then you have no choice but to be humble.
Right. So the idea there is the concept of humbleness of spirit. It's humbleness of spirit. Even though there it says, blessed are the poor in spirit. It's not talking about money. It's not talking about you not having enough spirit. Yeah. It's talking about being humble in spirit. And again, it's funny because I talked to a person on Facebook about kind of implanting words and concepts into Greek words. And I spoke against doing that. And it's not like I'm doing it here, because when you look at, matter of fact, let me just I've been screen sharing. Hey, my screen sharing, you know what I'm talking about? So when you look at this word, chapter 5, let's do it from here. Boom, chapter 5, verse 3. This word poor. Here. This word here, which is a related word according to the Septuagint, related to this word here, ani, is the word that means depressed. Is the word that means depressed in mind or circumstances, afflicted, humble, lowly, needy, poor. So I'm not just making this up. This literally is a related word to the word that Yeshua bringing out, with this word poor. Now we can also think about such verses as Isaiah 66, 1 and 2. Isaiah 66, 1 and 2 say what?
Yahweh, heaven is my throne and the earth is my footstool. Where then is a house you could build for me? And where is a place that I may rest? For my hand made all these things. Thus these things came into being, declares Yahweh. But to this one I will look, to him who is humble and contrite of spirit, and who trembles at my word.
Okay, right there, the prophet here is literally saying the same thing Yeshua said, or you could say Yeshua here is saying the same thing the prophet says.
Mm-hmm.
The way that you get to a place where the creator and sustainer of all things is making you his house, which is the ultimate blessing, is for you to have a contrite spirit, a poor and contrite spirit, or a humble and contrite spirit. Again, contrite, when you think about contrite, that word means smitten. Think about smitten, you think about something that is hitting, smitten. It's kind of like hitting, not hidden, but hitting. Hitting.
Hitting.
Hitting in the past tense. Hitting. Hitting. I don't know if hitting is hitting. I don't know if I just made that up or not. But smitten is this thing that has had something happen to it in such a way that it has become maimed. The word smitten is something, speaking of something that has been, I'm making this up, hidden, but in a way that it has become maimed, right? Okay. So we can think back to this idea of being refined and tried in terms of these things, this pressure, this fire that's being put on you, not for the purposes of destroying you, but for the purposes of refining you and transforming you. So we talk about this in terms of your spirit. A contrite spirit or a smitten spirit is the spirit that has been transformed. So when that Ruach HaKodesh comes and dwells on the inside of you, that's what's going inside of you, is your spirit is it becomes contrite because of the fact that it becomes smitten.
So
what?
We have a comment on here.
Oh.
Actually, there's 3 comments. I totally get it. The transformation doesn't happen overnight, though. We have to be long-suffering with our understanding in this awakening. The transformation should be continual, even to the most learned among Israel. Come a long way, but I was there and near there before. And then the last comment is Isaiah 60 verse 22. Yah will hasten it, transforming. Isaiah 60 verse 22. It says the smallest will become a clan, and the least one a mighty nation.
It's a verse.
Yeah. Yahweh will hasten it in its time.
Right. He'll bring it to pass.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So again, when we look forward to, yes, it's a process. Yes, it is a process.
Do you think that when he talks about hastening it,
he's gonna bring it to pass.
He's gonna put the spirit
he's the one that's gonna do it. Right? That's what the new covenant is. It's the spirit moving it forward. The spirit is the motivating factor in it. Yeah. That's what the new covenant is, right? The new covenant is Yahweh doing it in you. And Yahweh causing you now to do his will and his ways. So when we see Yeshua here talking about it, blessed in chapter 5 of Matthew, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. He's talking about those that will have this done to them. He's talking about those that will be part of this thing that's going to happen. That have this transformation of spirit in them that causes them to be a certain way, or poor in spirit, to cause them to be in the present tense poor in spirit, right? To actually be poor in spirit currently, to actually be humble in spirit currently, right? To bring that about in those individuals. When we look at this, he's talking about blessed. Like when we look back at the commands of Yahweh, when we look at the Torah, we talk about, the blessings and the curses, right? If you do this, you will be blessed, right? If you do this, you will be blessed. I guess the thing that binds them together is the fact that obedience or walking in the character of Yahweh, brings blessings. But now we look at this in the new covenant context. The motivating factor is now not your own will. It's the will of Yahweh inside of you, and you giving yourself over to the will of Yahweh and allowing him to work inside of you and move you forward in that forward direction. When we look at verse 4, blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. When you look at the idea of mourning, those that mourn, that to me looks like compassion. It looks like compassion, right? When you think about compassion really is a suffering with another, painful sympathy, sensation of sorrow excited by the distress or misfortune of another. You looking at another situation and feeling a way about that situation where it moves you into action, where I'm not just going to look at my enemy's car that's broke down and him having problems trying to fix it. I'm just going to ride past him and see him and say, ha ha ha, look at what's his name. He's in the ditch. But I'm going to have compassion. I'm going to have compassion for that individual, right? And that's going to move me to not only just say, oh, that's messed up, but I'm going to pull over and I'm going to get him out of the ditch, even though he hates me, right? But that's what we just saw, right, in the commands back in Exodus, is this the exhibiting of the character of Yahweh. You saying that because they said what? They talked about compassion and Veggie Tales. Yeah. But again, when we look at these things that Yeshua is saying, blessed are those that are. Blessed are those that this is your situation, right? This is where you are. You're somebody that mourns. You're somebody that has compassion for other people other than your own self, right?
For people that you like.
Yeah, for people, especially those who you don't like, right? Because either one, whether it's people that you like or you don't like, because you're manifesting this character of Yahweh, right, where you're supposed to treat that person with impartiality and just recognize a need in whoever it is, just recognize a need in another individual who's not you, and get out of this idea of selfishness and get into the idea of selflessness, and where if you see a need that you're able to meet, then you just meet that need regardless of who you're dealing with. Right, so that's would be a manifestation of the Spirit working on the inside of you, which would be what we're talking about in terms of those that would be inheriting the earth. Or we're on verse 4. Those that would be comforted. Okay, verse 5. Verse 5 is the meek. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. When we look at Psalms, when we look at Psalms 37, we see verses like verse 9, which say, "For evildoers shall be cut off, but those that wait on Yahweh shall inherit the earth." Verse 11, "But the meek shall inherit the earth, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace." Which this one, 11, really sounds like what we say on what Yeshua said. Blessed are those that are meek, they shall inherit the earth. It says it right here in verse 11 of chapter 37 of the book of Psalms. Again, we're not talking about just you doing this thing or that thing. We're talking about you actually being that. We're talking about you actually being that, you manifesting that being a part of who you are and how you move.
So it's not about like a reward system, like how some people might think, oh, I did this, that, this, and that, so that's why I deserve to inherit the earth. But I guess
it's not about deserving. I guess it's not about deserving.
You're not earning it. You're not.
It's just kind of about a matter of a fact. Those that
this is what follows.
Those that have a authentic relationship with Yahweh will behave in a certain way. And as a result of that relationship, there's going to be a favorable end to that. But also because of that relationship, there's going to be a way that you will be towards those that are around you that looks a certain kind of way. So you, in terms of what it looks like is you'll have that humbleness of spirit. It looks like, you'll have that compassion, right? What it looks like is you'll have that meekness, that gentleness, with dealing with others. And just a matter of factly, the part that goes along with it, oh yeah, you have this relationship with Yahweh, you'll inherit the earth. You will be comforted, right? Yours is actually the kingdom of Elohim. verse 6, which says, blessed are those that hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Now, when we look at this in terms of this idea of hungering and thirsting for righteousness. This is about your desire. This is about your desire for Yahweh. But Yeshua tells us that this desire don't originate with us. Nobody's sitting around saying, man, I really need to just really need to just be righteous. Right? Yeshua said in John chapter 6, verse 44, Yeshua said this. He said, John 6:44, he said, no man can come to me except the Father which has sent me draw him, and I will raise him up in the last day. So Yahweh draws you, Yahweh calls you, Yahweh pulls you in that direction. Right? You hear that word that has went forth, and you respond based on that word that went out, Yahweh's word that went out. You respond. So it's a response that you have. When we look at, for instance, the whole valley of dry bones, you have this valley of dry bones. It's people that's all this is just a valley. I'm saying people, but all this is just a valley full of bones. These unrecognizable things. But once that spirit goes out, now it becomes to come together and turn into this thing that actually looks like something as a result of that word going out. Right? So that word goes out, and then it calls you in to Yahweh. So we think about this whole idea of hungering and thirsting, right? This is a response to Yahweh's calling. And then the continuation of that is Yahweh inside of you, changing your heart's desires, right? Because when we look at what the new covenant does inside of you, the new covenant inside you causes you to do the commandments. It causes you to do the things of Yahweh, right? So it causes you to hunger and thirst after the things that Yahweh likes, or righteousness, right? So what Yeshua is describing there is the new covenant. He's teaching you the new covenant without telling you, but that's what he's doing, right? Because when he talks about somebody hungering and thirsting, or their very desire being changed into the character of Yahweh, that's what the new covenant does. That's what it represents. A changing of appetite, and your carnal appetite being changed from you wanting to feed the flesh and to feed your carnal mind and to feed all of those things that make you carnally appeased, but to now feed that which causes your spirit to be fed, to cause your spirit to be built up, right? That's what the new covenant does, right? So the thing that he's describing in terms of you being hungry and thirsty for righteousness, and them indeed being filled, is just this continuation of the new covenant and the manifestation of it. And again, Yeshua is giving these lessons, right, and teaching this new covenant way, and showing the people what this new covenant entails. Another one, verse 8, interesting, where it says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see Elohim." Blessed are the pure at heart. We know that this is not something that Yahshua is just stating, trying to perhaps tell the people just to be pure at heart. You should just have a pure heart. And then if your heart is pure, then you'll see Elohim. He's not kind of just giving you this thing that you can do so that you can see Elohim, but he's telling you a way that you would be
in order to see.
As a result of your relationship that you have with him. Because he's talking about the new covenant. Because we know that how? We look at Jeremiah 17, verse 9. It tells you about your heart. Jeremiah 17, verse 9 says, "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it?" Your heart can't be pure just in and of itself because it's wicked. It's desperately wicked. It's deceitful. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. So how can it be pure? Well, it can't be pure. Blessed are the pure in heart. What's he talking about? He's talking about the new covenant. He's talking about the way in which you will be as a result of what he's going to do for you through his life, death, burial, and resurrection, and pouring out the Spirit inside those that believe in what he has done for you. It's interesting that deceitful there, by the way, the heart is deceitful, is akab, or akob, which means it means deceitful, crooked, polluted. Yes, and of course, Yaakov is he that is deceitful or crooked, right? Or the heel catcher, right? Our forefather, right? Yaakov.
There's two more cards on here.
Oh, what is it?
The last two.
Where'd you leave off? Oh, but Yah does not meet the needs of all. We can at times interfere with his judgment or enable, but Yah does not meet the needs of all. But we can.
I think that was
Our compassion and kindness is supposed to be toward those who also fear Yah, not the ungodly, lest they overtake us in our blind kindness. Well, what I would say to that is, when we look at the command that we saw in, we look at the command that we see in the Torah, where it says, if you see the ox of the one who hates you in a ditch, then you go and get it out of the ditch. Right? So the idea here is not to be partial and try to figure out, oh, what's this person's life like? Is he worthy of me helping him? That's not the thought process. That's not the idea that is being put forth in the command in Exodus. That's not the character of Yahweh being manifest. He said, you go and get that thing out of the ditch, and it don't matter what your relationship is, right? So it's giving you this idea of equity and straightness and uprightness. and compassion and kindness. We're not talking about necessarily salvation. We're not talking about salvation in terms of, your internal existence with Yahweh, in terms of the where you stand in terms of your eternal judgment.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about is a character that we are to exhibit towards man, and it's not necessarily, in fact, it doesn't have anything to do with our righteousness. Moreover, we think about Yahweh calling his people. Yahweh choosing Israel wasn't because they were greater than any other nation. In fact, they was the least compared to any other nation. Yahweh calling us as individuals, he called us while we were yet sinners. He called me out while I was yet a sinner. Right? I didn't remain there, obvious, right? But that's when he called me, when I was in sin. I received compassion from Yahweh, not because I decided while I was in my sin that I wanted to change, but because of the compassion of Yahweh. He saw me where I was at and called me when I was there and said, "Come unto me." Right? So this is what the new covenant does, right? It don't, if it depended on my own strength to get through, I would never get through.
Hey, if I could add something
Go ahead.
to that, I was brought into the truth under that type of vibration to kind of pick and choose who deserves your compassion, love, and kindness and stuff like that. And for me, it was exhausting. That was just too exhausting, trying to be two different people. It's almost like having split personality, like being cruel and mean to one person and and being nice. But it's just like, when you understand the spirit that you're supposed to be under, you just do that all the time.
Right.
You don't. Yeah, it's not as exhausting. To me, it was just very exhausting.
He says it's not as exhausting.
It's just not exhausting.
It's still kind of hard, but it's not as hard.
It is hard.
It is hard to do that, but it's just not in me. At least for me to just be like, oh, I'm going to be mean to you. It's not in me to just be.
This is cool. The idea. This is the idea that what we see in the new covenant is a transformation of ourselves. It's carnal. It's in the better judgment of your carnal mind to try to figure out where somebody is and then base how you feel that they are in terms of their worthiness, whether or not you're going to deal with that person or not. That fits that fits in the mold of your carnal mind.
You know that there's of course you work in wisdom, so there's a limit. Like you're not gonna keep doing something for like someone who only calls you, when they need $5 or $10 or
well,
there's a limit to
right.
it. It's in wisdom. It's not like
right. It is in wisdom, and again, we look at this. We looked at that thing before and talked about this whole idea of things we looked at like usury and things of how we deal with the poor. If somebody's in need, the idea was that there's actually a need there.
Not just
if I see the people across the street and they really need something, not like they want something, but they're in need. I'm not gonna say, well, them people is some heathens, so I'm not gonna help them, right? Idea is you exhibiting the character of Yahweh, and then when we look at what Yeshua is saying here in terms of these ways, how we are, this is the result. This is the result of our transformation. That he's working in us, right? This is what happens when you walk around with Yeshua in you and manifest Yeshua, through you. Yeshua's manifest through you. It looks like something. It don't. You can't say that you are a walking manifestation of Yeshua and then have partiality when we just seen law, statutes, and commandments that show that we aren't supposed to be dealing in partiality.
I think the last statement on the comments true at the night. It's not about being naive.
Oh, you don't have to be cruel to be led by the Spirit. We can live in peace without being. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well,
because I think sometimes people equate like
there's not
people saying no to somebody or.
Well, that's not cruelty.
Yeah, that's not. That's
right. Right. It's not even about. It's not even about saying well. You don't. It's not. It's not about cruelty, right? You saying no to a person is not being cruel towards a person. But at the same time, you saying no could be you being cruel. But the whole point is that like with the command that it was given in the first place, your current relationship with an individual can cause you to be cruel and say no based on how your relationship is. That's my enemy. I don't care how much need he's in. I don't care what my ability is to help him in that need. I'm not doing it because of the fact that he slapped me 2 days ago.
2 days is real close to time.
Well, however many days ago. I'm still feeling.
I still remember that.
I'm
so
still
I'm not,
feeling
I'm
away.
not trying to do that.
Right? But that's your carnal mind telling you, right? You know, you treating a person a certain way can be that light shining on that person that will cause them
to come out
to change their life.
To change their life.
Right? When we look
we do know a lot of people who had that when they received the compassion, it kind of broke them down.
Yeah.
Where they was like
man, I just slapped you the other day. This is how you gonna treat me? Yeah. What is it that causes you to be like?
How can you look past something that I might have done or whatever to help? That's if they have a true need, though.
That's what this life is about. That's what this life is about. Is
you know, it don't mean that you're gonna mend the relationship and you're gonna be their friend.
No,
you're gonna let them
right. But it's not about that. It's not about that. Yeah. What it is about is you manifesting the character of Yahweh, and by you being a light and in this world of darkness, and be like, wow, that's a light. And the new covenant is about people actually changing as a result of seeing that light, acting a certain kind of a way, not acting a certain way around you, but the way that you are is actually affecting what they're doing, and it's causing them to, to move in another way. Okay, let's move on because it's getting on. I just wanted to, let's see here. I don't want to go through chapter 5 without looking at 17, 18, because, when you talk to those that are inside of mainstream Christianity, and they say, well, Yeshua, he fulfilled the law, so therefore we don't have to keep the law.
You can't even go to the mainstream Christians, honestly, because we have people we know who are even Israelites who say that because Yeshua came. I don't want to. And there's, you said mainstream Christians.
I don't want to sit up here.
You sit up here blaspheming the Christians, and we got people.
Stuff. I know, but those people that you're talking about, I put them in the same category.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like that. To me, I feel like that's mainstream Christianity, but be that as it may, the idea is Yeshua fulfilled it. because Yeshua fulfilled it, therefore I don't have to do it.
That's
Think not, verse 17, think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled. So when you get these people who have this concept in their mind, well, Yeshua fulfilled the law, so therefore I don't have to keep it. You know, we have to look at this and understand this in the context of what's being said. If he said, I did not come to destroy it, but I came to fulfill it, or he's saying, if think not that I come to do this thing, but I came to do that thing, whatever it is that destroy means, it can't mean the same thing as fulfilled. Because he said, I didn't come to do A, I came to do B. I didn't come to destroy, but I came to fulfill. So when I look at what it means to fulfill, it can't mean destroy. So the way that people use the word fulfill, Yeshua fulfilled it, so therefore I don't have to do it. They use it to mean that I don't have to do these things anymore. They make it seem as if I don't have to do these things anymore, where this is not the idea. First of all, when we understand what the new covenant is, when we understand what the new covenant is, we can quickly dispel this whole idea of us not doing certain things. We can quickly dispel the idea of us not living a certain way. We can quickly dispel the idea of us not walking in a certain way when we understand what the new covenant is. When we even understand what words that come out of Yeshua's mouth himself, we can destroy these different concepts, thoughts, and ideas. Yeshua himself said, if you love me, keep my commandments. If we have a particular relationship together as a result of this relationship that we have, it's going to look like something. It's going to look like you're walking in my statutes, right? That's what it looks like. If you love me, keep my commandments. Proof that you love me, proof that we have a relationship together is you're doing the things that I like. You do the things that Yahweh likes as a result of your relationship. That's one. But two is the new covenant is the law in your hearts. The new covenant is the law in your heart. So how is the law done away with? It just can't be. So when we look at Deuteronomy 13, chapter 1, this is a verse right here, right? Deuteronomy 13 says, if there arise among you a prophet. So first of all, if you say that Yeshua came and he did away with the law, statutes, and commandments, these verses right here say something about the one in which you place your faith. If there arise among you, this is Deuteronomy chapter 13, verse 1. If there arise among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and gives thee a sign or a wonder, and the sign or a wonder come to pass, whereof he spake unto thee, saying, let us go after other gods, which thou hast not known, and let us serve them. Thou shalt not hearken unto the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for Yahweh your Elohim proves you to know whether you love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul. You shall walk after Yahweh your Elohim and fear him and keep his commandments and obey his voice, and you shall serve him and cleave unto him. And that prophet or that dreamer of dreams shall be put to death, it says. You kill him. You kill that prophet. Right? So if you're killing the prophet who is telling you to go after other gods or to not keep the commandments of Yahweh, if you're killing them, you definitely you can't follow him and kill him. Right? So Yeshua can't be that guy. Yeshua can't be that guy who's causing you to not do the will of Yahweh. Because according to the Torah disqualifies him. The Torah makes that individual somebody who's a false prophet. Right? So we have to get away from this idea that is taught within mainstream Christianity of this I don't have to do the commandments of Yahweh, when the thing that the Spirit in you actually causes you to do is the commandments of Yahweh. The thing that the Holy Spirit in you, the thing that it causes you to do is the laws of Yahweh. The thing that the Spirit of Yahweh in you causes you to do is to actually walk in the character of Yahweh. So does it mean worrying about oxes and ditches and so on and so forth? Not necessarily. Or birds and nests or what have you. What it's doing is causing you to walk in the character of Yahweh, which looks like something. Right? So this is what we have to understand. This is what we have to get to. And this is the main thing that we see when we look at what Yeshua is teaching us and showing us is that and the prophets, the law and the prophets, right? He did not come to destroy the law or the prophets, but the law and the prophets are showing you, they showed you all along, they showed you from the beginning that there was this way that you will walk and that you would live, this way that's going to lead you into the promised land. But this way is not going to pardon your transgressions. This way that's going to lead you into promised land is not going to pardon your transgressions. But there will come a time when let's just look at this real quick, and I'll just be done with this. When we look at Jeremiah, which is the new covenant, Jeremiah 31. Starting with the 31st verse.
31 what? 31?
31 starting with 31. Where it says, behold, the days come. This is coming. Behold, the days come, says Yahweh, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of Egypt, which my covenant they break. Although I was a husband unto them, I was their husband, they broke it, right? But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yahweh. I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor, saying, know Yahweh, for they shall know me from the least of them unto the greatest of them. Says Yahweh, for I will forgive their iniquity and remember their sin no more. Right? So there's a difference. There's a difference now between what we see in the new covenant and the old covenant, where the old covenant don't change you on the inside, right? And it didn't even pardon your iniquities, right? But here, with this new covenant, This thing that Yeshua is bringing, that Yeshua brings into being, is dealing with our iniquities and pardoning our iniquities and doing away with our iniquities and cleansing our hearts and minds from the inside out, the changing and the transformation of his people into the people that he would have for us to be as a whole. Okay. All right, there's much more to talk about in chapter 5, but I think for now we'll call it. Okay, so does anyone has any questions, comments? Okay, so that being said, from here we say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.